All right. Welcome, everybody, to yet another Back to the Basics episode. To the point of tonight's episode, we are talking about the adventure. Finally, after last week talking about our antagonist, the baddie, not even the big bad evil guy, but someone for our players to be antagonized by, now it's time to perform things, to give our players things to encounter, or in the words of Bilbo Baggins, I'm going on an adventure. So, let's go ahead and give it just a moment, and then we'll get started. All right, so as we're talking about back to the basics, the whole point of the acronym is so that we can structure an entire campaign. It doesn't even have to be like for a one shot or something like that. This could be for an entire campaign. You can use this structure, easy steps to outline and provide framework for the entirety of a full-on campaign. This is essentially all you really need to get started. And in episode 2, we talked about the baddie, and that was our antagonist. Who is pushing the player's buttons? Who do we have available to us for them to fight against, to give us problems? And now, of course, it's time for our players to begin encountering those problems. And those problems will take the form of adventures. So, let's go ahead and clear a spot on the board. And we're going to talk about adventures. I should probably I should have made sure that I'm centered here, but we'll figure it out. Adventures. Excellent. So whenever we're talking about building an adventure, there's the basest form, right? The simplicity of, hey, what are we doing tonight? And then there's the overarching idea of what are we going to encounter in the long run? What is the premise of the campaign, the plot, if you will? And so there's some things that we can begin to consider, but they don't have to happen right away. Because we can always throw one-shots at our players, or events that seem to be disconnected or not connected altogether, and those will provide us with an interesting framework to go off of. But then on top of that, we can string them together after the fact, and you'll be amazed at the sort of plot that can be created through that. So I'm going to start by talking about a plot circle or a story circle. Okay, I need to remember to write large for the notes. A plot circle. And the point of the plot circle is to give us that framework so that if we hit all these things, then we know that we have covered the bases, right? And of course, it all begins with a U. This is who our players are. This is establishing the status quo. And that status quo is what I would say for us in role-playing. This needs to be the campfire. Okay, you can use what I call the campfire. And the campfire allows your players to go around the table. You introduce your player, your character, and then you introduce how you know somebody else at the table. I'm Garl Strongjaw, and long ago I got in a tavern brawl with so-and-so, and because of that, we've been adventuring ever since. And instantly, you have provided an at-the-table connection for your players to work with. That's what I call the campfire. You all take a turn and tell a story of previous adventures that you've had. It's kind of a different take on the tavern scene. You all meet in a tavern. That's great. That doesn't really get us very far. The ability to all meet in a tavern, okay, why are we here? Why do we care? using the campfire will jumpstart your players into the adventure because they're already connected. They know each other now. You've had previous experiences. Apparently, you've got in a bar fight with him, and he came to your aid, and you've been adventuring buddies ever since. That's awesome. That will jumpstart your campaign altogether because it won't make the first 2 hours of your first session just drag on and on. The need, this is our hook. This is our MacGuffin. Okay? When we're talking plot circles, this is what is going, the MacGuffin. What is going to get your players down the road? When we're talking about literary devices, it is the reason, the catalyst. It is what is causing, what's the central cause of the story. That's fun, manga artist. I like that. But the MacGuffin here is the Holy Grail, right? The entire reason for this grand adventure, this epic story, it is the Death Star plans that kicked off this grand story. All of these things, the One Ring, right? All of these things have spiraled into other stories, and it was because of a singular catalyst. And so we need we need a need, if you will. It's a hook. That's all that it is. It's the hook that gets your players on to the next step. And then the go. This is, okay, I'm going on an adventure. If I take another step, I'll have been further from the Shire than I've ever been before. It's the, oh my goodness, things have actually kicked off and we're entering the unknown now. It's the first moments of entering Rivendell. When you're realizing, oh man, like there's a greater world out there. And showing that to your players is a lot of fun. But we have to have that established. And that's not really the adventure proper. That's just a singular part of it. Step 4 is the search. This is, okay, this is the journey for the MacGuffin has begun, right? The search is taking place now. We're actually actively searching for the MacGuffin. Yeah, it could be the people, places, and things. Very good. The go. The things that we experience out there. This is the world, right? The world building aspect of your adventure. But the search here, this is, okay, we are actively headed through the mines of Moria. The search has begun. Oh yeah, we need to go to this place, and we're encountering things along the way. So this is where things actually start to hit the road. And I would say this is where we introduce our first twist or setback. Okay? From a plot perspective. That is where that begins. And then we begin with the find of the plot circle. They've found something. They've found the item, the thing that they're looking for. They've recovered it. They know what they need to do. But now they've found the want. But is it worth it? Okay, they have to pay a price for it, and that is what comes from the take. They found it, they take it, and they have to pay the price. This is, so from the Fellowship of the Ring perspective that I've been using a whole bunch, this would be losing Gandalf. Was it worth paying the price? Yeah, we made it through the mines of Moria in this search find. Yeah, we found a way through, but then was the price really worth it? And that's an interesting thing to explore with your players. This is really going to fall into the impact or the I of the basics. Pay the price. I need to finish writing what I write here. And then, of course, they return, and they return changed. The whole point of an epic, heroic journey is for your, in storytelling, it's to exhibit change, to exhibit becoming more than we were. That's the whole point of leveling up, right? It's becoming more than you were. And so when we're talking about going on this grand adventure, and then you see it. They do it pretty well in The Lord of the Rings, which apparently I've been referencing a bunch of because it fits the plot circle quite easily. But after the grand adventure, all three movies, Frodo and the buddies go back to the Shire, and you can see the kind of the ho-hum humdrum. They're at the tavern, they're trying to get back into their life, and they see these hobbits, getting excited over gourds, and it just doesn't hit the same anymore. They look at each other across the table, and they're just like, these guys have never experienced what we've experienced. And exhibiting that with your players is difficult, but it can be powerful when you accomplish it. And that's the whole point of this heroic plot circle, this grand journey that we're going on. It would help if I didn't cut off my own notes. Right. And of course, so Manga in YouTube's comments here, he says that The Lord of the Rings is a classic work after all. The head of an entire genre, it's going to have correlations with all of fantasy, right? But that's a discussion for another time, because right now we're talking about adventure. And so this plot circle really represents the overarching plot. Okay, this is the beginning to the end of the story. And when we're looking at this circle, there's there can be repeats here in the low end, kind of this search, find, take here. This can happen as many times as the story needs until it continues on into the return and the change, and the hero returns from his journey, and suddenly he's a master Jedi, and oh man, he's back on Tatooine, and it's just, some water farmer kid showed up, and everyone knows him. Everyone knows their family. I'm Skywalker, and everyone's like, oh yeah, the Skywalkers, the water farmers, okay. But no, he's a master Jedi now. He's changed. He's had 2 movies of stuff to happen, and now he's back and he's different. And that is, it's going to be fun for you to explore that with your players. But now, let's take a look at let's kind of shrink the picture a little bit, right? So that's grand scale. That is the overarching kind of have an idea of these things as you create your story with your players. But now let's kind of cram it in. Let's go down to maybe a one shot, right? We need a beginning to end, like an open and closed story to happen on any given day. We're just going to drop our players into a story. And so that is where I definitely recommend some version of my 3-2-1 method here. The 3-2-1 rule. And I can't, it's been so long of me using it, I can't even remember where I first saw it or read it or something like that. But over the years, I've used it time and time again. And what it boils down to is you're looking for 3 scenes. Let's make sure I'm in the bar here. 3 scenes, and these are like descriptive scenes. You can actually you've created a description of this setting, right? It's not just you walk into the tavern. You walk into the tavern and you can smell stale beer and the wood shavings on the floor, and the sound of humdrum people and all the doodads, right? You've described this. You've created a description that's going to cater to the senses and the internal impressions that you feel. Not just your physical senses, which I recommend you at least have 2 descriptors. Okay? Always have at least 2 descriptive things. So something you see, something you smell, something you hear, right? Maybe you feel. And then something that you would, at least one thing that you insight about the scene. Just give it to your players. Stop making them roll for these things. That's ridiculous. We're humanoids. We've evolved We had to survive years of evolution to get to this point. There's absolutely no reason that you are having your players roll to incite the mood of the room. Good heavens. Like, maybe if your wisdom score is like 8, but even then, like, you should get the general vibe, right? Your dog, when you come home from work, can tell if you've had a bad day. There's absolutely no reason for you to be having players roll to feel the vibe of the room. So, I know that might have come off a little more intense. Like, how dare you make your players roll? It's not intended to be that way. I definitely feel strongly about that. So you've got that. But yeah, read the room, man. Like, for real though. What are you even doing? Read the room. So read the room. Your players will automatically read the room. Passive insight is a great thing. Yes, manga artist. It is a wonderful thing. And I always just give them something. The room feels subdued. And you would passively perceive that it looks like there's kind of a group of beat up, there's a beat up party of adventurers over in the corner. And so, yeah, like they're going to just sense the vibe of the room. Okay? Read the room, man. You want 2 combats. Okay? Now, I say combats, but let's just break this into 2 encounters. Okay? So if we refer to old school D&D and we're like, oh wow, we read these old notes, and you're like, you should be having 8 to 10 encounters in an evening, and you're like, whoa, man, 1 combat takes like 3 hours. That's ridiculous. I could never do that. That's because we're thinking of encounters wrong. It's not just combat encounters. This is role-play encounters, this is utility encounters, or this is combat encounters. You could use any of the 3. But I recommend 2 combat encounters, and I'll show you why in a minute. Okay? And then, of course, we need 1 meaningful role-play. And I emphasize the crap out of meaningful. The reason that I emphasize meaningful roleplay is because you should be role-playing all the time, everywhere, as much as possible. It's a role-playing game. And if that's not your style, that's cool. I get it. It's not for everybody. But there needs to be roleplay. And if it's at least 1, well, at least your players will eventually catch on to the fact that, oh yeah, like, this is the role play. Pay attention, everybody, because he's about to drop an important secret on us. Okay, cool. And if that's what it takes, that's what it takes, and that's okay. But a meaningful role play, something that your players are going to encounter, and this is where I would recommend that, yeah, anything, a random encounter up here. But a meaningful role play, they have the information that they'll get just by talking to people, okay? And you can give them something. So give them a piece of something. And then have them roll. Always give them a tidbit first. And then have them roll persuasion or whatever they deem necessary to get further information. And the reason that you do this is it makes that roll meaningful. And it doesn't gatekeep information behind a roll. Because if this is the role play that's going to hook your players, hey, there's a need, you need to go and do. Oh man, you just rolled a 2 on your persuasion. He refuses to give you any information. Have a nice day. Well, you just stonewalled yourself. You just closed off the session by yourself. Don't do that to yourself. Please, for the love of all that is holy, don't do that to yourself. Give them the information that they need. Oh, yes, there's been word that people have been going missing in the next town over. Yes, very disturbing, yes. That's great. Woo, okay. They know that there's something going on in the next town over. Okay. Hey, go ahead, make a persuasion roll for me. He rolls, excellent. He rolls up a 16. Awesome. As you are continuing the conversation. He takes a slurp from his ale and he kind of looks around the room. And he says, "Don't tell anyone I told you this, but word is that the Smith brothers are responsible. Haven't seen them in a fortnight." Ooh, okay. And your player, because of the roll, just got a secret. And that made that roll feel important. What is it? It's, oh yeah, the Smith brothers. Go to the Smith farm and, yeah, look into the Smith farm. The word is they went missing first. Ooh, that little tidbit. Boom. Okay. Awesome. What that does... yeah, right? What that does is it makes the roleplay feel important. And it makes that player, that's probably skill-based player, feel like what they just did mattered. That roleplay was meaningful to them, and they have discovered a secret. And that's what makes it meaningful. Because we could just spoon feed our players stuff, and we need to. Please don't gateway things behind roll walls. But you also need to have little tidbits behind those rolls so that they can discover things. And of course, if he rolls low, no big deal. He knows that there's problems going on at the next town over, and that's the end of it. The end. Move on. Right? So if you take this format, this 3-2-1, 3 scenes, 2 encounters, maybe not necessarily combat encounters, and then 1 meaningful role play, and then we move on and we take that and we apply the 5-step encounter. Okay. And this is, I can actually definitively attribute this to John Thor, who is an absolute role-playing wizard. And the things that he's done for this hobby are incredible, and you'll probably never understand it. But he's done so much for this hobby, and I just wish he was a little more active on Instagram for us all. Yeah. So things I know on YouTube. Here comes the hook. Choo-choo. Yeah, come on, guys. Like, let's go. Here's the next step to the evening. Please move on. Please. Exactly. So when we're looking at the 5-step encounter, this is where we can really hone in. So we started with our plot, and then we went to like a one shot, and now we're gonna zoom in even more to, all right, here is what a singular combat encounter can look like. And so that singular combat encounter is going to start with an entrance or a guardian. And I'm just going to write guardian because I'm running low on time. Gosh dang it, I could just keep on talking. Yeah, Manga, you've got that exactly right. In additional history, this is where your skills, that meaningful roleplay, that's where your players can use their skills. It's a perfect opportunity for them to do that. So the 5-step encounter, your guardian. Step 2 is the puzzle, okay, or the roleplay, the mid-encounter roleplay. 3 is the setback. 4 is the climax, or the main event, right? The point of the evening. What are we encountering? The big finale. And then 5 is the twist or reward / reward. And I encourage you to use both. And I have so many videos on this here exactly. So for everyone who's watching this on YouTube, go to my link tree. I'll put it in the comment link. The link in the description. Go watch some of those videos on Instagram. Everyone on Instagram, go to my bio link. Check that out, because I break down exactly how I structure a singular encounter, which could take 3 to 4 hours. You could one-shot a 5-step encounter, right? Then you toss in a couple of scenes, a couple of, a minor utility encounter, a meaningful role play that hooked you into this. Ooh, magical how that works. Pay attention. And then bam, you're done. You're done for the night. That was 3 to 5 hours of content, and you could literally whip it out in 10 minutes of work. Sit there and you think about it. But notice, if you will, let's go back to the plot circle. In the go, search, find, take here, right? Our meaningful role play gives us a go, and we can use that over and over and over again. That search can be a part of a utility encounter. That find, that's the climactic moment in the setback. Was it worth it? The twist, okay? And we can just repeat this as many times as necessary. Let me pull this paper back up. So taking a look at the basics, right? So we've got our baddie. We've structured our adventure using the 3-2-1 and the 5-step encounter. And we can repeat the adventure, the setback, and show our players the impact as many times as necessary to fill a campaign, right? And if you have taken the time to actually set out your plot circle, you know how many times you need to do that. Or you go until it's done, right? So, the whole point here, right? Oh, yeah, the secret and the twist. That happens at the end of this 5-step encounter. It magically sets you into the setback, which can present impact to your players, which will lead them directly into the next adventure. So, folks, that is all that I have time for today. I want to thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate everyone for your contributions. Everyone on Instagram, please come over to YouTube, subscribe and follow all the things. So things I know. What we're repeating as often as necessary is the adventure setback impact cycle. So the adventure, what we discussed today, we can do that as many times as we need to, the 3-2-1, and we can do that over and over and over again because the setback, the twist at the end of that 5-step encounter, right here, at the end of the twist there, that is our setback. Yeah. And that will go, and then all we need to do is display that impact, and we will run that circle over and over and over again until we're ready to go into the return and change, right? When it's time to take our players back to that first tavern, and the tavern keep recognizes them, and with a shaking hand, hands them a goblet because of how formidable and fearsome their reputation has become. And that will depict to your players like, oh man, like I guess it has been like 10 levels since we came through here. And it's fun. It's just a fun, simple way to show your players that like you have grown, you've become more than you were. And that is the point of any story, to become more, that we can become more, that adventuring will do that to people. So, thank you everybody for being here. I appreciate it all. Of course, please come on over to YouTube. Everyone who's on YouTube, like the video, please. Apparently that matters. There's algorithms on YouTube too. So, do what you can, like and share all the things. I really appreciate you guys participating. So, thank you so much. And if you wouldn't mind, in this tumultuous time and everybody having I've been getting a lot of people commenting to me directly, direct messaging me, mentioning like, hey man, like it's hard doing the things. And I feel it. I'm definitely feeling it in all the things that I'm working on. So if you wouldn't mind, maybe put a little extra effort into taking care of your players this week, because they need it. And make sure you're communicating with everybody. And as always, thanks for watching.